Hello, David. We're going to take a look at your emphasis posting here for some observations on what we see, maybe some feedback. So let's jump right into it. First thing I like to do is sort of take a look overall at what we have here, just to sort of see how you've arranged everything. I'm noticing you kind of mix things up in terms of which is which, and you've labeled everything, but they're not necessarily patterned together. That's all good and fine, but it does give us a little bit of difficulty to do comparatives, but that's neither here nor there. I mean, that's a minor element. So I'll kind of go through these more specifically, because we talked a little bit about the generalities of the project, what we were trying to accomplish and why we were doing the project itself in the overview video. So I'd like to kind of get more into the specifics of the compositions and sort of what I'm seeing with your approach to photography. So the first thing that I'm noticing just in the overview, just looking at these as smaller images, is the extraordinary attention to structure, to organizing the space and using the entire picture plane. You've chosen the 16 by 9, which is a very dynamic space to begin with. So there is an advantage to that, because you automatically have this sort of active space, and it automatically feels like this sort of energetic kind of shape for us to be looking at. So it's a good choice to use. But at the same time, it can kind of overwhelm a little bit when we're dealing with something that's sort of passive. So it's a good thing, but it can also get out of hand energy-wise if we're not careful. So you're using it, I think, very effectively because you're not putting things dead center unless it's very specific, very specific. You're organizing things based on, most of the time, based on shape. It seems like you are using either the golden ratio or the phi grid or variations of. There seems to be sometimes we look like we're using the rule of thirds. Exposures all look really, really good in terms of like whether they're light or dark. I would say, though, that the images of somewhere right in here of the shadow, the shape, as I see it here, we'll talk about those in just a bit, but the textures, when we start to get into this middle zone here, that maybe those are maybe the lesser of the accomplished ones, though they still are quite beautiful. This one I'm going to assume is the texture one. They just seem less natural, if that makes any sense. The others just seem so free form, like you just found these compositions. You're not, even though they're so highly structured, it doesn't look like you're trying to impose a composition onto them. So I'm saying all these good things. So what could be some things that you would want to work on? Because clearly we always want to know what are some things that we can improve. And we can always improve. We look at things sometimes in terms of what we're trying to accomplish communication-wise. But here I can see some very simple things, minor things, but some simple things that you could do to improve and really kind of tune the instrument, if we want to use that metaphor, of the images. And really they are minor, but they can make a big difference in terms of how your images are coming across and how they will really improve quite a bit. There's just a few things I'll point out here. So I'm going to first point out this image as an example of some good things and then something you could improve. So we can see right here, you're using this angle here, and this angle is coming down right here into this space. It's avoiding this corner here, right? So you've got this kind of coming up. It's just sort of off center there. Then it pulls up and then comes down, and it doesn't dive into this corner. That's an excellent thing. Okay, so we want to avoid having something like that dive itself into the corner here. And the reason is that corner, especially with the 16 by 9, is a very high energy space. That's the most, energetic space in a blank screen if you just had white, because it changes direction. So the corners are areas in the composition that we don't have to address immediately, and we don't have to address aggressively at all. So that's an important thing to kind of consider. This is a very good thing that you've done right here. We do have some detail up in this corner here, though, that we would have wanted to avoid. Again, it's kind of the opposite of what we were able to achieve here. We got some business going on right up here that pulls us away, that kind of highlights a detail that maybe you didn't even see within your rangefinder. Rangefinders, or when you're looking through your camera, don't always give you 100% of what you're actually taking a picture of. We talked about some of the differences between certain kinds of cameras. What is the difference between a very expensive camera, a pro camera, versus some of the really less expensive cameras, versus the prosumer kind of medium cameras? There's lots of differences. One of the differences has to do with the viewfinder versus the sensor. How much of what you're taking a picture of are you actually seeing? And so you might not have actually seen this when you were making the image, but neither here nor there, we would want to clean that up. Little things like this little bump over here, we would not want to have that. It's all very, very minor, but without those elements there, this image, sort of fine tunes it. Like I said, these are minor things that we would want to correct on stuff like that. There was another one that had something similar that I wanted to point out here. Let's see, which one was it? I'll pull back out here and see where it was. Oh, here it is. So this one is very similar to what we were talking about before. This doesn't quite get into the corner, but it is kind of close enough. Again, if we pulled this away just a little bit, brought it in, or you lower it a little bit to bring this diagonal over to here, or down here a little bit more. This little bit right here, do we need this element right in here? Do we need that detail? If we do, we need a little bit more of it, because it's kind of resting there on the bottom there, and it's pulling attention down. You got a wonderful tension happening up here. There's enough energy here that's working quite well. So you've got this sort of balance to try to achieve. You've got such a simple composition that all of a sudden, all of these minor things really sort of scream out at us when we're looking at the image. Simplicity is really hard to do. This is a really good idea. I like what you're doing here with the shadow, with the symmetry of it. You've got the footprint, which kind of breaks it up. You're using space extremely well. This here, where the ball kind of comes down, and see how it sort of gets cut off just barely right down in here. I call that like a car crash or sort of like a collision. It's not quite enough to qualify as cropped or running off the edge, but it's also clearly not showing the whole ball either. And it creates this sort of awkward sort of tension, almost as if it's flattening itself out on that edge. Minor thing, again, but you want to kind of either pull it back and allow the whole thing, or come on in and let it be somewhere right around in here. Enough of it so our eyes don't want to close it off, so we feel satisfied with the shape as being finished. And that's sometimes just a visual kind of thing, where we can't really identify where that is until you start to move the camera in and out. But these small elements where you have these collisions with objects to the edge of your composition, they can work at times, but you really want to avoid them when you can on the whole. Same thing's happening with the words here. The M sort of crashes here. The C is a little bit better, but it still could stand to come down a little bit more. Text is always going to be a difficult thing to incorporate. Unless it's a signage, unless you really want it to just be the word music that we see and read all together. That's always going to take precedence. People in your photographs are going to take attention, and text is going to take attention, no matter what. People will be first, though. Human beings want to see other human beings when they see it. And this was one of your as I see it. The other as you see it here, I think was down here. No, maybe it was up here. Wait a minute. Do we just have the one? I thought we had more than, oh, here it is. Here's your other as I see it. So with the as I see it, the objective, the intent there is to put everyone in a position where you are sort of letting go of all preconceived ideas of what photography is, or what it's supposed to be, is a better way to say it. People, folks have a preconceived idea of a photograph. It's in focus. It has a subject. There's a certain compositional sort of expectation that things aren't cut off, and so on. But what if none of that is so? What if we just say, no, none of that has to be. Let's just make photographs that don't have to be in focus, don't have to have a subject at all, and the composition can be just whatever we're exploring. That's what I wanted everyone to do. After an entire series of images where they're working with various structures and they're working with various organizations, just have at it with no rules whatsoever. And it's interesting that some put rules on themselves with the as I see it. There isn't a wrong answer to the as I see it, because it is really just, here's what I'm going for. So I don't say these things with any kind of critical eye, more about you have freedom, yet some people give themselves rules. You have the freedom as I see it, and for some, you went ahead and chose something very sort of structured here. You made an image with lettering, and you chose these lines and things like that. And then over here, you chose to, again, use this diagonal, things like that. By the way, this is another one of those elements that you could have probably done without over here. So, ask yourself about that. It's curious. You could have done anything, and you chose this. So what is that communicating to you? What is that saying to you about your tendencies and your sensibilities about things you are interested in communicating? And what about exploring some of the, less traditional sides of it? Is that something that just has no appeal to you at all? Or is that something maybe you would experiment for later on? I always feel like it is a good idea to sort of play around with things that we're terrible at, because it does, in fact, inform the things that we are really comfortable with. It comes back to that and allows us to sort of re-see what we've been doing all along. So a lot of really good things that I'm seeing in your photography here. Clearly, you've been doing photography prior to this. I can see that just by the sort of structure and the organization of what you're doing. I appreciate the sort of aggression. Basically, you jumped right in and made images true to the way that you make images. At the same time, don't be afraid to try to break it out. Don't be cautious here. This is the time to sort of make mistakes, if you want to call them that. I always say I would much rather have students fail spectacularly than to succeed at mediocrity. And your images are not mediocre, but I don't want you to make safe images for you. I want you to really explore and feel the freedom to fall on your face and do things that don't work at first. So that's what I have for you. I really look forward to seeing more of your work, and we'll see you in the studio. All right, bye now.